All right, welcome to the first section in your success session on nutrition. Okay, so the Look Better Naked Nutrition Blueprint. This is a download available to you in the Trial Client Success Portal. You do not have immediate access, don't want to overwhelm you, so it will become available once it becomes available in the Trial Client Success Portal. Just go there, download it, go through it. It's basically all the basics of nutrition that you need to know. So the basics always work for about 85% of your results. So if you have any questions, let me know. So there's printouts you can do, so cheat sheets, meal plans, all the tips, everything is located in that blueprint. Highly recommend going through it as soon as you have access to it. But moving on, we're going to get into quick coverage of certain topics, and probably the most important is carbs and blood sugar. So blood sugar is related to insulin, leptin, ghrelin. Okay? All of these are hormones that are released when blood sugar goes up or goes down. They are related to fat storage and related to hunger and satiety, so when you feel full and all that good stuff. So wheat, whole grains, sugar, oatmeal, donuts, list can go on. Twinkies, Snickers, bowl of cereal, total cereal, Count Chocula, doesn't matter what kind of cereal it is. All right, it's all carbohydrate, it is all sugar. And what carbohydrates do is they raise blood sugar, and then they cause a whole host of problems, which I will get into here. Gluten, I'm sure you've heard of gluten, and some people say stay away from gluten. Some people say eat gluten if you don't feel anything, but everybody is affected by gluten. In my opinion, everybody should be on a gluten-free diet, and that is because all gluten-containing products raise your blood sugar. Okay, and we'll talk about why that is bad. All carbohydrates, or the following carbohydrates, have anti-nutrients in them, so legumes, soybeans, or soy, beans, peanuts, lentils, whole grains, whole wheat bread, they all have anti-nutrients in them. Anti-nutrients take nutrients, usually minerals, from the body, and you can't properly assimilate those minerals, which will lead to nutrient deficiencies. And our cells want to eat to be nutrient fed, nutrient rich. So if you're just eating a bunch of processed food and stuff like that, your cells are not being nourished and you're not healthy. So sugar, sucrose, table sugar, fructose, artificial sweeteners, all this stuff, it's bad stuff. Processed foods, packaged or in a box, these are the worst offenders for blood sugars, triglycerides, and etc. So what if it's been it pretty much has been a big fat lie, and you've pretty much been lied to about carbohydrates and fat for the past 50, 60 years. Current recommendations in the United States are get anywhere between 1,600 to 2,100 calories, 60% of your calories coming from carbohydrates, and then 20 to 30% coming from both fat and protein, fat and protein. So is it a coincidence that from 1994, in 1994, the American Diabetes Association upped their recommendation of carbohydrates up to 60 to 70%, and the former recommendations was 50 to 60%. So is it a coincidence from 1997 to 2007 that the diabetes rate doubled? Okay, I don't think it is. So if you haven't read the book, Why We Get Fat, it basically goes over the entire history of lies that the USDA and the government have put on us about these carbohydrates being healthy for us, but they're not. So the summary of it is basically insulin makes us fat. Okay, but what drives insulin is blood sugar. Okay, and what drives blood sugar is carbohydrates. Okay, so again, carbohydrates are the thing that is causing us this obesity epidemic and all that bad stuff. All right, doesn't matter what it is: grains, gluten, sugar, oatmeal, orange juice, bagels, donuts, cereal. It's all sugar to the body. Your body wants to turn what you eat into the simplest form, to digest. So for carbohydrates, it's going to turn into glucose, which is sugar. For fat, it's going to turn it into fatty acids. For protein, it's going to turn it into amino acids. Now, simple versus complex. I'm sure you've heard of simple carbs versus complex. You're told to eat complex carbohydrates, which is oatmeal, pasta, whole grain bread, whole wheat bread. That's just a big fat lie as well. So the problem with simple sugars is you eat a simple sugar. So say you eat a donut. All right, your blood sugar goes up. Insulin comes in, tries to lower that blood sugar, but the problem is it crashes. You crash, and you get hungry a lot quicker. The problem with complex carbohydrates is you eat it, your blood sugar stays up, elevated a little longer, but eventually it comes down. So when that blood sugar is up, you can't be burning fat. Okay, we want to have stable blood sugar levels. All right, so how carbs actually make us fat is you eat carbohydrate, insulin gets released. Then blood sugar goes up, more insulin gets released. The fat and carbohydrates that you ate and the fat that was running around in your bloodstream, they now get pushed into the fat cells and they become triglycerides. Your fat cells get bigger and fatter, and hence you get bigger and fatter. And fat is going to stay in that fat cell until insulin levels and blood sugar levels go back to normal. Okay? But one of the problems is if you are a sugar burner and you eat carbohydrates, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and sometimes snacks, your blood sugar and insulin levels will never return to that level when you woke up. Okay? So pretty much you'll be in a fat storing mode all day long. All right, and then inflammation is one of the biggest issues to get off carbohydrates. Inflammation, like I mentioned, I don't remember which slide it was, but inflammation pretty much opens you up to everything. Okay, so you get inflamed from the foods you eat, chemicals we put on our bodies, so lotions, chemicals we use in shampoos and deodorants and different stuff like that, and you get inflamed from environmental toxins as well. All right, we want the inflammation to be acute, not chronic. Okay, and if you're eating a high carbohydrate diet, you have chronic inflammation. So carbohydrates are the worst offender for belly fat. Belly fat is the worst inflammation you can have on your body because it leads to visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat stuck around your organs. You do not want to have that because your organs can't do their job. They can't expand. They can't do what they need to do. All right, so if you've heard of the word, there's an acronym called TOFI, T-O-F-I, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. So even if you're a normal weight, you still could have visceral fat, which is bad. And it's not healthy. Blood-brain barrier. A lot of carbohydrates will pass through the blood-brain barrier. This makes them very, very addictive. So foods, and I'm putting foods in air quotation marks, that pass the blood-brain barrier, you have cocaine, heroin, marijuana, sugar, gluten, caffeine, alcohol. So those are the big offenders. All of them are super highly addictive and very hard to get off. So if you try to get off those, you usually have withdrawal symptoms. Another issue to get off the carbohydrates is Alzheimer's and dementia. Alzheimer's is now a top 10 killer. Okay? It is not a genetic disease. It's not an old person disease. Alzheimer's is a nutritional disease. Okay? They're now referring to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. Okay? All right, and then finally, insulin resistance is another thing that is related to high carbohydrate intake. And I consider high carbohydrate intake to be anything over 100 grams of carbohydrates per day. What is insulin resistance defined? It's basically a diminished response to a given concentration of insulin produces less than the expected biological effect. So what that means is basically when you eat carbohydrates, insulin comes in to lower the blood sugar, okay, and bring everything back to normal. But after years and years and decades, more and more insulin has to come in to get the same effect. So say you ate a piece of whole wheat bread, 10 grams of insulin was released to lower that. Okay, 3 decades down the road, you need 30 grams of insulin to lower that. So that's just an example. More and more insulin is coming in. Basically, if you want to call insulin resistance what it is carbohydrate intolerance. Okay, so if we call it carbohydrate intolerance, it's basically people know what to do. All right, lower your carbs. It's that simple. And if you want a stat, is the American Diabetes Association really in it to help people get off of their insulin and reverse their diabetes? I think not. $245 billion was spent on treating diabetes in America in 2012, and that is up 41% since 2007. Okay, so American Diabetes Association, their recommendation to fight diabetes is to eat your carbohydrates and then take your insulin to combat the effects of blood sugar and high insulin. So that's kind of like fighting fires with flamethrowers, and makes no sense to me. Hopefully it doesn't make any sense to you. Okay. This is the longest slide, so obviously some stats on sugar. Americans eat 48 teaspoons a day per person of sugar or sweeteners on average. Sugar suppresses the immune system, so decreased functioning cells. So if you ever eat sugar and you're in a place where there's a lot of sickness, or you get sick right after eating it, or you don't feel as good, that's the reason why. Your immune system is depressed, and it can be depressed for up to, I believe it's 48 to 72 hours. They did studies showing only two teaspoons at one time is the limit for a healthy person. So 1 teaspoon of carbohydrates is equal to 4 grams of carbohydrates. So if you look on the package, if it has 4 grams, say it has 12 grams of carbohydrates on it, that means there's 3 teaspoons of sugar in that product. Okay? You eat a bagel, that's 48 carbohydrates, that's 12 teaspoons of sugar. Remember, everything is turned into sugar in the body. So a bagel, a Twinkie, there's no difference. Your body doesn't see any difference between those. Leaches out minerals and vitamins. It produces AGEs, which is advanced glycating end products. So basically, the sugar you eat hooks up with the fat and the protein that you eat, bounces around, causes a lot of inflammation inside the body, prematurely ages you, and starts to leave plaques in the brain, which lead to cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's. Okay, and sugar, possibly the hardest drug to give up. Okay, it's in everything. And it's super cheap. So you can buy a big gulp for 99 cents. You buy a bag of cocaine that's as big as a big gulp, it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Super cheap, it's everywhere, and a lot of people have issues getting off of it. Okay, glucose versus fructose. So like I said, pretty much all that whole wheat bread is going to turn into glucose when you eat it. Fructose is another beast. It is another reason to stay away from carbs. With fructose consumption, you are going to get 7 times more AGE production, advanced glycating end product production. And again, that's going to prematurely age you. It's going to leave plaques in your brain, in your artery walls, all that stuff. It's going to increase your triglycerides. Triglycerides is an independent risk factor for every single disease you never want to get. We want to keep our triglycerides as low as possible. What's in fructose? So I'm sure you've heard of high fructose corn syrup. Soda has fructose. Soda's fruit. Okay, so just an example: a 12-ounce soda has 22 grams of fructose. The same amount of apple juice has 24 grams of fructose. So fructose is very bad. It doesn't go through the blood-brain barrier. Fructose is processed strictly through the liver, and what that does is it doesn't have an insulin release. Okay, so you can just keep eating it. You won't get full. You won't get filled up, and it's very bad for the liver. Okay, and another thing with fructose is like I said, fruit does have fructose in it, but it's a natural fructose. There's a lot less than just consuming like a pop or something like that. But you do want to watch your fruit intake, especially the higher sugar fruits like bananas, papaya, pineapple, that kind of stuff. Because in a banana, in a medium-sized banana, there's 27 grams of carbohydrates. All right, that's 7 teaspoons of sugar. And especially if you're trying to lose body fat, lower your fruit intake. Watch your fruit intake. I recommend no more than 2 servings, and usually in the first part of the day. Okay, the fruit that's the best is going to be the berries. That has the most nutrient value and the lowest amount of fructose in it. Okay, and I actually did a fruit challenge, 21-day fruit challenge. I made a video of it. I'll link the video down here. Basically, my body fat went up. Not exactly sure the amount. My weight stayed exactly the same. I think it was, yeah, I don't want to say anything, but I'll link the video up here. My body fat went up. The only thing I changed was I consumed more fruit. So five servings a day, which was the recommended amount. Okay, and another thing with fruit, or another thing with fructose is agave. So agave is touted as a special type of fructose, or a special type of sweetener, and agave is pretty much 90% fructose. With fructose, again, it's processed through the liver, and it goes straight to the fat cells. Okay, so it bypasses the blood-brain barrier, doesn't make you hungry, it goes straight to the fat cells. So you want to avoid fructose, you want to lower your carbohydrates, and that is pretty much it on this one. We're going to move on to fat.